Torah Or, Pashas Toldot, page 34, second column, a few lines to the end of the page. Five lines to the end of the page. Okay, now the Rebbe started the Mayim Rabbi Yuchel Chabes Sasav. Now the Rebbe started explaining there's a Nahar and there's a Mayan. A Nahar, a river, is over the ground. Mayan is a well underneath the ground, but it's the source of all the water. So he explains that the difference between Mayan and Nahar, because it says Nahar Yetzemeid and Lahashkis Sagan. So he said, so he explains that La'asa Lavi, now the Gan Eden is a level like Nahar. Nahar waters a Gan in the Eden. But La'asa Lavi is going to be the level of Mayan, the source of it, and that's true. In order for that, there has to be Torah mitzvahs. Okay? So he said, because Torah mitzvahs connects to the essence. So he says, in order to understand what is the level of Rivka, because what did Rivka do? V'atored Kada, she lowered the Kad, which is Chav Dalid, which is the 24 books of Tanakh. So Rivka lowered that level. So he says, in order to understand what Rivka did, so you first have to understand Yitzchak. So he says, what's the level of Yitzchak? Yitzchak is Tzchait V'tainug in a future tense. So he says, what is that? That refers to La'as Lavi, by Tchis HaMesim, when there'll be the Levyasin and the Sharabar and the Tzachik Bay. So he says like this, there's Shemesh Shemag and Hashem Elokim. The level Yud Kivavke is like the sun that shines. Elokim is a level of the protective, the covering of the sun that limits the power of the sun. So he says in Elokus, but in order to get anything, you need the level of Elokim. Okay? What is the role of the Jew? The role of the Jew, and he says like this, Valkain, 5 lines in the end of the page. Valkain Yardan Neshama Lamata. That's the purpose of the Neshama. So what did Hashem do? Hashem created the world in a way of Elokim, that Elokus is basically covered and concealed, that it should be able to reveal itself in a finite world. But what's the purpose of the Neshama? Lias Ev and Elokim. To be Eved Elokim, it's interesting. The Gemara uses the expression Eved Elokim, which is really a pasuk. Eved Elokim Lashalei Avadei. Eved Elokim, it says like this. Eved, the word Eved, comes from the word Ma'abed, to tan the hides. So what is the concept of tanning the hides? You have a hide, you kill an animal, or shecht it. The hide is very coarse, it's not usable. So you have to tan it, which Ma'abed, and tan the hides to make it usable. But here, the pasuk is using the expression Eved Elokim. That means you ma'abed, you refine the level of Elokim. Elokim is a level of concealment. What is the purpose of the Jew? To undo that covering and to reveal godliness as it is, the way it will be lost in loving. So he said that's what the level of Eved Elokim, meaning la'aved u'lesakin, the level of cheshech v'hester. There's to refine and work over the darkness that comes from Elokim, which is concealment, to transform darkness to light, and that's what it says. Asher bara Elokim la'asis. We say in Kiddush, that the God Hashem did to do. What does it mean? The Medrash says, l'sakin, meaning to fix the hester animshach mishem Elokim, to remove the covering that Elokim covers. So the whole avodah of a Jew, Al Rebbe is saying, is Hashem created the world in a way that Hashem is Shumog and Hashem Elokim. Elokim conceals the level of Yud Kevavke. Right? The Mogen covers the Shemesh. The covering covers the Gilui of the sun. So granted, now it's the only way we can get that Gilui is through Elokim. But through the Aved of Torah Mitzvahs, we became Eved, we become an Eved Elokim. Eved Elokim, like it says in Tanya, by breaking your nature. The Gemara says you become an Eved Elokim. Otherwise, you learn the Gemara only 100 times, you're called Lo Yavadai. So what is the Avodah? To refine the level of Elokim, meaning to undo the covering that Elokim covers, and then you get the Gilui of Elokus. So how do we get to that level? That's through the Bittul of Yesh La'ayin. By the Bittul of Yesh Ta'ayin, which is the, he's going to explain in a second. The level of Mesiras Nefesh, Shai Deze, Sapcha, Sheikhel, and Heira. Through the level of Mesiras Nefesh, do you transform darkness to light? And like remember, we learned in the Atat Tetzav and many other Maimarim, that Mesiras Nefesh is the key to reveal Elokus, and to reveal the essence of the Neshama within the Jew. Because Mesiras Nefesh has the power to transform darkness to light, meaning to remove the covering of the Neshama, to remove the covering of Elokus. So through Mesiras Nefesh, you reveal that level of Elokus that's concealed. Behind what is that? He says through Mesiras Nefesh of Tefillah and Torah mitzvahs. Well, now what does Mesiras Nefesh mean? Mesiras Nefesh is an interesting halach in Shulchan Aruch. It says in the Ramah, which basically says why you have to learn Chassidus before davening. It says there's an obligation. The Ramah brings us down in Hilchos Tefillah at the beginning, that before a person davens, they have to mizbeinen in gadlus hakel v'shiflus ha'odam, the greatness of Hashem and the lowness of man. Now, when you're mizbeinen in davening, which by the way is only when you learn Chassidus, you see the greatness of Elokus and the lowness of man. When you learn Moshe, you see the lowness of man. But when you learn Chassidus, you see the lowness of man in comparison to the greatness of Elokus. So what is the Mesiras Nefesh of Tefillah? Mesiras Nefesh of Tefillah means that you're giving yourself up. You realize that you really are nothing. That's the halach in davening. You have to think you're a nothing, the lowness of man versus the greatness of Hashem. And the more you realize the greatness of Hashem, the more you realize how more nothing we are. And that's what he uses the expression, I Mesiras Nefesh b'Tefillah and Torah mitzvahs. And that's what it says. Chayk asali Elokim. By Yitzchak was called, like he said before, Yitzchak Yud is Lashon Asid, future tense. The main thing, and what again? What did Yitzchak say? Tzchayk asali Elokim. Again, the level of Elokim. Why? Because the ultimate tzchayk, the ultimate simcha, is when darkness becomes light, when evil becomes kedusha. That's the level of Elokim. Elokim is the tzimtzum, concealment of godliness, choshech, and all that. Nimshach aydei shem Elokim comes ultimately through Elokim. That's why we discussed last night at the class in the inyan of Yitan L'cha Elokim. Yeah, you asked the question. You got a nameless honorable mention last night. To the guy that asked the question, why does it say Elokim didn't show up? Anyway, we'll leave that at that. Anyway, so Elokim. I didn't say anything. Oh, I said you didn't show up. Nothing, no. So what's the Yitan L'cha Elokim? Because the ultimate level of Gvura, of Kedusha, the ultimate level of power and might, is when Yisin Ar is Min HaCheshech. So therefore he says, what is this chayk used to have, for the nobles, they used to do this, these shows and games. They would, from something new. What did they do? They didn't care about anything. They would have a lion, the famous story with the lion and the bear, so they would have a lion fight a bear or any other animal, and they would rip each other apart, and that was their enjoyment. Where does enjoyment come? As they say in English, S-O, same old is boring. Where do you get enjoyment? Like you said, you go on vacation, it doesn't make sense, but the bottom line is something new, so you have enjoyment from it. Kavachin is bittul yesh la'ayin. The level of bittul of yesh to the ayin, zehus chadjus, that's something unique. That a yesh becomes ayin. That cheshech becomes or, right? That's a tremendous chiddush. That a creation which is a yesh, he says, but if there would be no Elokim concealment, then everything would be a revelation of Elokus. If everything would be a revelation, there would never be anything unique, nothing special. So what's Chayk Asal Li Elokim, Avram Avinu said it, Chayk Asal Li Elokim, that what's the whole Chayk? Asal Li Elokim, from Elokim, when we make Elokim into Kedusha, when we Havaya Hu Elokim, that we really show that Elokim is really Havaya, that means there is no concealment. That's the ultimate level of Chayk. If Elokus would not be concealed, that cloud wouldn't have this level of Tainug at all. So where does the primary level of Tzchayk come from? Hashem Elokim. It comes from the name of Elokim. That normally master that because of Elokim, meaning the transformation of Elokim to Kedusha, that's who bittul yesh la'ayin. And he said that's the Mesiras Nefesh of Tefillah, Mesiras Nefesh of Torah Mitzvahs, and so on. When do you have the ultimate simcha? The ultimate enjoyment when the product is done, not in the middle of the work. Okay, when they're making the food, you don't enjoy the food yet, it's not done. When the food is done, then you could eat it. Shenish, the ma'abir about taking the Shem Elokim. When the name Elokim is completely refined. That means now we're still in the middle of the Aveda. When is Aveda done? Mashiach comes. Then the Aveda is done. So the ultimate Chayk is when Elokim is elevated to Havaya. When is that? Primarily when the Aveda is done. Meaning when Mashiach comes. Kamei b'may separation. Like it says by creation. Vayar Elokim es kol asher asavine teiv me'eid. Vayachol hashamayim. Then Shagam and kol ha-melacha. When all the work of creation was done, Nizgala Tainuk. When the work is not done yet, Ein Tainuk Mizgala. Why? Kim Eisik Ligmar Melacha. This is an interesting thing. The Gemara says, Chassidus explains, Rabbi Ben Zakkai said, on his deathbed, his students, he was crying. Rabbi Ben Zakkai on his deathbed, the Gemara says, was crying. So the student said to him, what are you afraid of? You're afraid to die? You're going straight up. So he says, I'm crying because I see there's two paths before me. One to Gan Eden, one to Gehenna. And I don't know where they're taking me to. I don't know if they're taking me to Gan Eden or to Gehenna. So the Chassidus asked the question. The Gemara said, but Rabbi Ben Zakkai lived 120 years. It was like Moshe Rabbeinu, like Ezra. He never walked 20. Rabbi Ben Zakkai was the super, one of the greatest tzaddikim ever. So how is it possible he didn't know where he's going? So explanation is, the Rebbe says, Chassidus explains many places. Was there a time bomb? No. Maybe it's a time bomb. Anyway, so the explanation is, it's like they give the mashal, Chassidus gives a mashal of a businessman. You have a store, yeah? So during the day you're making business. At the end of the day, when the store closes, then you make a cheshbon, reckoning with a good day, a bad day, whatever it is. If you're going to start making a cheshbon in the middle of the day, then you're not going to make business. You have to, during the day, there's no time for a cheshbon, you have to make business. Rabbi Ben Zakkai understood that every minute of his life, I can't make a cheshbon, a reckoning of how I was, because then I'm wasting time from doing what I need to be doing, from making business. So therefore, Rabbi his whole life, Taka never made a cheshbon of where he is and where he should be. And not, God forbid, sinning, but where he should be and where he is. Now he's dying. Like, if not now, when? So now he had to sit down and make a cheshbon where he was. So he says, on my level where I should have been, and again, everything is relative. A tzaddik could be a very super great man, but if he's not where he should be, then he's going to Gehenna, so to speak. He still needs to be cleansed. For the being good instead of better. So now, so what I'm saying over here is that during the lifetime, that's when you're doing the malacha. The bitter is when it's done. Now the Aved is to be Eved Elikim, to transform. Now the Aved of transformation. When everything is done, then it says, what?
Does Dainam have levels too, like Gan
Sure. The Gemara speaks about what's called Shiva Medure Gehenim. The 7 chambers of Gehenim. The previous Rebbe in the Rishima of Yubei Stammas and Kota Deburim, the year after his release, he wrote every detail of the incident. So he wrote the Shiva Medure Gehenim, the 7 chambers of Gehenim he went through. So there are levels. The best food is in the lowest. That's where most people are. Then when you do the birurim, when you finish, then the pasuk says like this: "Uschadish pnei adama yismach Hashem b'maisav." You can tell him the earth will become new, and then Hashem will be happy with his actions. Why? Because when the earth becomes chadish pnei adam, means it'll be the chiddush of tchis ameisim and all that. V'yagil yatzchak v'tainik. V'lachay nikra yitzchak al shema asim. Therefore, Yitzchak is not, he should have been called Tzchaik. Right? Tzchaik means, why is he called Yitzchak? Because Yitzchak, the Yud, represents L'asad Lavei, Shel Asad Yel Gil Yitzchak V'tainuk Zeh. That's why, by the way, it says, the Medrash says, L'asad Lavei, and we're going to say, An Yitzchak Ki Ata Avinu. When L'asad Lavei is going to be Yitzchak. Why? Because the ultimate Gilu of L'asad Lavei is a transformation of Elokim to Kedusha, right? I mean, the Cheshach Ta'or. That's the level of Tzchaik, Yitzchak. Yitzchak is the Tzchaik, the Aveda, because Avram is Chesed, Yitzchak is Gvura, Milmata Lamaila, right? So Yitzchak's Aveda is the Tikkun, fixing the world through Aveda. That's what Yitzchak's Aveda was. We learned last night, digging the wells. That's Momata Lamaila.
So what do we call them now? What do we have to call them?
No, then also the primary, now it's primarily Elokei Avram. Baruch Atah Hashem Magen Avram. Right? That's what it says. V'yei bracha. Okay, so it says, L'atchum yatchum l'atchum mitzav v'eschol l'goy gadol v'avarechecha so Rashi calls in the Medrash should be first Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. That's why we say Elokei Avram, Elokei Yitzchak, Elokei Yaakov. But Vehayei Bracha mean you'll be the Bracha. That's why we say Magen Avram. But also because it's the transformation of Tachten to Elya, the refinement of Elokim, making it Avaya. So that's a Yitzchak is the Tzchaik of Lasad Lavei.
When does Yaakov really get to be the main guy?
Yaakov's the main guy anyway. He's Tiferes, Emes, it's all.
I mean, when Mashiach comes, isn't it going to be more Tiferes? Like everything will be like...
Will be Yitzchak and Yaakov. As Rambam says, you wait and see. We'll wait and see what happens. But it does say lots of love is going to be Yitzchak Avinu, Kiata Avinu. Okay, so he says now, Vine, B'Yitzchak Siv, by Yitzchak it says, when, Avimelech, Yitzchak told Avimelech, she's my sister, and then the whole story. So the pasuk says in this week's parsha, "V'nei Yitzchak mitzachik as Rivka ishtei." He saw Yitzchak and Rivka, acting like husband and wife. Pirush kol atzayin tainu. So what does it mean? Yitzchak mitzachik, again spiritually. Yitzchak mitzachik as Rivka ishtei, meaning the ultimate level of Yitzchak mitzachik is through Rivka. What does that mean? He says, "Tainu the Yitzchak kanal hunim shechayde Rivka ishtei." It's through Rivka. He says, why Rivka? The primary transformation of darkness to light is shayach b'nefesh habamish ba'adam. Again, the neshama doesn't need tikkun. The neshama itself ain't tzarich tikkun. What needs to be refined? The body and the nefesh habamish. She'tzrich abiru v'tekken lasis l'sakin. Mashenken and neshama atzma ain't tzarich tikkun, right? The neshama itself, the nefesh, the neshama itself doesn't need to be fixed. It's the chelak alokah. To what? To refine the guf and nefesh habamas. Okay. What's the source of the nefesh habamas? From the chayis hakodesh of the merkava. Just like the wagon, the chariot, it has the koyach. The chayis elevate the chariot. I'll explain in a second. Okay, you have the chayis hakodesh, right? And then the merkava v'yicheskel. Then you have adam shalakisei. Valakisi the muskamara adam. Right after the first day Shavuos. The adam shalakisei. And then the pasuk says v'chayis neisis sakisei. The chayis elevate, meaning the malachim elevate the chair. So who becomes elevated? The adam that's on the kisei, which refers to the neshama, adam elyon. Okay, so just like in the merkava, the chayis hakodesh elevate the adam that's on the merkava. So the nefesh habamis that comes from the chayis hakodesh, the source of nefesh habamis says mishmari efanim, from the sediment of the efanim of the chayis hakodesh. So therefore, dafka through the nefesh habamis is the ultimate schayk v'tainug that the nefesh sholekis becomes greater. In other words, the nefesh sholekis comes into the body to refine the nefesh habamis. The neshama itself doesn't need tikkun. What's the purpose of the yiridas and neshama lamata? Is to purify, to rectify, to transform the guf and nefesh habamis. Now, what happens when that happens? So the chayis neisas sakisi, the neshama becomes greater. That's the whole concept. Yiridas tzerach aliyah. Yiridas tzerach aliyah doesn't mean the neshama is no good in it. The neshama is perfect. Chelak alokah mimal. But in order for the neshama to reach a higher level than it was, it has to come through something new, through a chiddush, the enjoyment. So dafka through the neshama coming down, being mesak in the guf and nefesh habamis, dafka through that can the neshama be elevated to a greater level. So therefore it says in the Yitzchak mitzachek as Rivka, through Rivka, through the guf and nefesh habamis, because again we learned many times, especially by the class, Yitzchak and Rivka is in the neshama body. That's why the Torah elaborates the whole parsha, the whole story in Chayisot about, repeating the whole story. Could have said the whole thing in one word, one pasuk. Finished. Why? Because there's the shidduch of body and soul. So what's the through the neshama coming into the body, through Yitzchak coming into Rivka, and therefore Rivka had to be found by Blavin and Besuel's house, as a medrash, Sheshana bein achechem, like the rose amongst the thorn bushes. That had to be, that level had to be elevated, and then Yitzchak becomes greater.
The way Yitzchak is coming from Shamayim
down.
It's coming the neshama into the body.
Yeah.
But the shaman needs to put the body to be elevated, isn't it?
That's what he's saying. Why? Why does the neshama have to come into the body? So the purpose is to fix the body in the Shemamis, because Hashem wanted Dira b'tachtainim. He didn't want Dira b'Gan Eden. So he wanted a guf in the Shemamis, physical corruption and all that evil. Yeah? And the neshama comes down with a mission to purify that, to transform it. Iskaf, you're breaking it and transforming it. So then that the neshama accomplishes its mission. So then what happens? The neshama becomes greater. How does the neshama become greater? Because the nefesh habamis that comes from Chayis HaKodesh elevate the Adam Alakisi, elevates the neshama. So the neshama doesn't come down to be fixed. It comes down to be elevated. To better than good. So he says, Kach, just like the Chayis elevate the Kisei. Therefore, only through the nefesh habamis can it elevate the nefesh halakis, meaning after refinement of the nefesh habamis. And now the Rebbe just adds now why? Because the nefesh habamis is the level of Asa, which is the world of Tehu. And Yaakov Avinu, the neshama, is the level of Tikkun. Tehu is higher than Tikkun. Okay? So therefore, when you elevate, like we learned the food, because it comes from a higher level. So when the neshama refines the body, and you reveal the source of the body in the nefesh habamis, which it comes from Tehu, which is lifnei malach melech, higher than the level of the neshama, so then the neshama becomes greater.
Is the shore Hashem stronger than people?
Animals are stronger than people, yeah.
So why the body doesn't go up?
So
The body does become refined.
No, but eventually goes down to the ground.
And then what happens?
More wisdom.
And then you have Tchesa Mason.
Yeah. Well, eventually.
Eventually. That's the ultimate tzchaik and enjoyment, the ultimate completion of everything is payday. Payday is Tchesa Mason. That's the payday for all the Avodah. That's the tzchaik.
And the cycle starts again?
What, after Tchesa Mason?
Yeah.
No, then it's done. Work is done. Mission accomplished.
What will happen to the world then? Where's the world going to go? Who's going to eat the
We're going to wait and see. That's what it says in the books. What will actually happen, the Rambam says it. We will know when it happens.
there's got to be neshama in the everything.
Yeah, but the neshama is going to sustain itself from the body. Now, the neshama sustains the body. Lots of loving, because the goof comes from yesh miyayim mitziyusim atzmusay. So that level of elokus will be revealed. So the neshama will be sustained from the body. Because in essence, the body is higher than the neshama. That's why bechira, therefore, neshamas are called banim atam l'Hashem Elokeichem. Banim. But the guf is ata v'chartanu mikol oamim. Now the Rebbe says in Tanya, banim v'chartanu mikol am v'loshin, that real bechira is not on the neshama, it's on the guf. Shkoyach to your hakachaynik.